peaceful and beautiful and physical and angry all at the same time.
Were you idiot, your mind would cave in and your heart would explode within your chest.
This is going to be a shame.
Here we go!
Hello, good listener, and welcome inside the TCA studio in beautiful Bytown, Canada, as the NHL season is officially underway. Matt Robinson along with you today. We're about to talk to our buddy Jeff Veillette, do a little Toronto Maple Leaf season preview. But just before we do, want to remind you, if this is the first time you're checking out the show, we'd love it if you'd subscribe wherever you're hearing us right now. Hit follow, hit subscribe, and if you've been around for a little while and you haven't done so yet, we'd love it if you'd go ahead and leave a rating and a review wherever you're hearing us. Helps out a lot, gets the show a little more exposure. Only takes a second. We would really appreciate that. Today is going to be all about the Leafs. Tomorrow, our Ottawa Senators season preview on the day they kick off their season. It is Leafs and Habs later on tonight, but the Sens aren't at it until Thursday as they begin a trip through the state of Florida to kick off their year. Not an easy trip, but you got to start somewhere, I suppose. So Graham Nichols will be with me on Thursday as we get into all things Ottawa Senators. But that's tomorrow. Today we're talking to Jeff Veillette, as I mentioned. Jeff, what's happening, man?
Not too much. Just enjoying this unseasonable warmth that we have happening down here. From sounds of it, you guys have it too. So getting those extra bonus weeks of summer that go with the extra bonus weeks we had at the start.
This is it, man. We'll take it. Absolutely. It feels like baseball weather. I want to ask you about that in a second because I know you got down to the game. But you know where we like to start around here. I don't know if you're having a pint or if you've, over the course of the summer, I know you're a busy guy. If you've been out, maybe checked out a new brewery, sampled something you might want to shout out here on the show, or?
So I'm gonna firstly right now I'm not having one. I'm not gonna lie, I'm having a Fresca.
That's all right.
I'm drinking a little less at home right now, trying to keep getting myself back in shape.
I hear you.
So there's that.
It's a Monday night as we're sitting here, so
that's very fair too. Yeah. I'd say best brewery type spot. I'd actually go somewhere that's not available to us right here. I played in the Buffalo Sabres ball hockey tournament during their fan festival last month, which was a lot of fun. It's a really, really cool idea that they have going there. Great value, fun hockey, ties in with their fan fest and their prospect games and all that. We went to Southern Tier Brewery, which is right next to their arena.
Oh, wow.
And there was a pumpkin beer that I had there because on top of not drinking as much at home, I'm also not drinking very much caffeine. So instead of the pumpkin spice latte, I'm having pumpkin beers. My brother got me a few from LCBO as well recently, too. So the Great Lakes one's pretty good and St. Ambrose is pretty good. But at Southern Tier, their pumpkin was amazing. It was like drinking a pumpkin pie. It's by far the best executed version of that that I've seen. Unfortunately, you can't get it in Canada, but that was great. If I have to go local on that same vibe, though, the Great Lakes is great. The St. Ambrose, I don't think it's very available.
It's pretty available right up here and right across the river from Gatineau, right? So we get some crossover from Quebec up here, so very
nice.
popular.
I just know it's low stock over in Toronto right now. I think because it's the cheapest of the ones going. But I'm on the pumpkin kick.
If you're one of those Leaf guys that does travel down and see games in Buffalo and makes them crazy, is this a place you could stop? You said it's right next to the arena?
Yeah, it's literally maybe a block and a half, 2 blocks away. Because they have this whole little complex there, Keybank Center's right there, and then Harbor Center, which is their practice facility, and where Canisius University and the OJHL's Buffalo
I think they
Junior
played
Sabres
some World
play.
Junior games in there, yeah.
Yeah, and they the prospect tournament that they have every year is usually right there. We saw one of those games there, and so the Southern Tier I think is on one of the corners of that facility, which means it's maybe 2-3 minute walk from KeyBank.
Okay, so you mentioned having a pumpkin beer down there. Just the other day, I had a pumpkin spice espresso latte porter. So there's a lot going on with that one. Not doing it again, but it is that fall time of year, or it's supposed to be. So tried the pumpkin spice thing. You also mentioned Great Lakes. They have something called the Octopus Wants to Fight IPA, which is a personal favorite of mine. One of my go-tos. There's always 6 or 8 in my fridge. But today I'm going to Hamilton, Collective Arts. And while we're chatting, I am going to have one here, an IPA, 6.1% called Life in the Clouds. Because right now, Jeff, that's sort of how I'm feeling watching these Blue Jays. I know you were just down at the game on Saturday. Take me inside the stadium, man. It sounded incredible on TV. Was it, Vladdy, the Jays get down 2 outs in the first inning, and then Vladdy crushes a solo home run. Before that moment, is there nervous tension? Is it just a party that he sets on fire and turns to 11? What's it like there early on Saturday afternoon?
I'd say probably closer to the latter. It just seemed like there was a lot of excitement in the building. Like it was packed in there even like well before first pitch. I had general admission tickets because I'm not about these $8 gazillion prices. I gotta enjoy my Toronto sports moments on a bit of a budget.
Sure.
And yeah, I think I got there at like 2:45, and like flight deck and the TD zone and the Corona zone. I don't remember the names of them. I'm very sorry to the corporate sponsors of the Toronto Blue Jays. They were all like, the seats were gone. Like the set, like the areas you'd be able to easily see from those sections, they were already like all taken, and a lot of people were already like in their seated areas were already there. Like the building was at least half full by like an hour before first pitch.
Wow.
Like there was just so much anticipation for the whole thing. This is also, I think, my first time that I've been there since they fully finished all the renos, and like everybody else, great work there.
Yeah.
Someone who slummed it out in the 500s in the late 2000s, early 2010s on those like $2 tickets or those season passes. It's a night and day difference of a ballpark now. But yeah, like the energy was good, and obviously Vladdy hits that homer and it just sets everything off, and just the momentum kept going and going. There's a little bit of nerves towards the end of Gosman's run, obviously. But
bases
but once they started,
loaded, and Aaron Judge at the plate. There's a reason to be nervous.
Yeah, exactly. But once they started scoring again, it just went right back to a party and never stopped. And clearly didn't stop for much of yesterday either.
No, that's right, man. I'm sort of curious, Jeff. As we look back, a lot of people sort of expected this to be a really busy offseason around the NHL. It did not turn out to be so. I think maybe what got people excited was the idea that there's all this money in the system again, and so teams will be free to do things. But what we forgot to consider was there's money in the system again, and teams aren't forced to do things, and teams don't need to get out of things. So aside from the Mitch Marner departure, which everyone knew was coming, what did you think of the moves that the Leafs made and the guys that they brought in, and did you expect that there might be more?
I mean, it's hard to say. I think kind of going back to like what we talked about last year a couple times about how this is kind of like an okay to pretty good team. There's really not a ton that they could have done with the situation they were in. Obviously, they had a little bit of favor in their way to buy themselves some space through Tavares staying on that sweetheart deal. I think that's obviously the highlight of the offseason. Getting that taken care of. I admittedly was a little bit nervous about it going into the final days, especially when it was like, oh, he's asking for about $5 million. It's like, okay, well, why isn't it done? I'll give them credit. Obviously, they will chip away a little bit more on that, probably more than they needed to, but don't look a gift horse in the mouth on that one. Beyond that, it's like I don't think they really did a ton that makes them like better. In a clearly obvious way. Obviously, they did what they could to get something out of the Marner situation.
Yeah, better wasn't really on the table, was it? It was tread water when a guy like that is leaving is the best you could possibly hope for. Don't you think?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think so. I mean, unless you get really creative, but there weren't really game breakers on the market. There wasn't either through free agency or through somebody asking for a surprise trade out of nowhere. I guess maybe you get lucky and someone like a Nick Ehlers wanted to come here instead of Carolina, but then you also needed this management group to say that's the kind of guy that we want. Like there were maybe some ways to get creative and come out of here a little bit further ahead, but instead I think the focus was more on kind of trying to shift the identity to something that they were happy with, and doing what they could with what they had. I think there was also a little bit of, okay, let's make sure that we're prepared for future off seasons ahead and not completely lock ourselves in when a lot of this core is already signed further ahead and not getting any younger. And then for much of the summer, there was talk of top free agents being available. Obviously, the big man went off the board today.
Broke some hearts today, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Like, I've talked about that on various platforms. I never really thought he was leaving there. I thought he was taking some time to try to leverage the Oilers into making moves that made them better. I thought he was going to wait a little bit while longer, maybe to the deadline to keep the aggression, but maybe getting Connor Ingram and Jake Bowman extended was the kind of fundamental upgrade that he felt was enough. All power to him, I guess, because that's a lot of money left on the table. The point being, a team like Toronto and I think several other teams didn't want to get too committed far ahead to.
This was it, right? As long as he wasn't re-signed, you had to at least allow for the possibility, no matter how remote it was. Yeah.
Right, exactly. You can't be planning your entire team around it, but at the same time, you don't want to close that door, because if you're the team that has an opportunity on their doorstep and then doesn't take it, you look pretty silly. But I think, yeah, Toronto's priorities were just like not blowing their load too hard on future money, making themselves a little bit more into that kind of harder nosed style that Berube wants them to play. Obviously, trying to get Nyes locked up early, which you can say up or down on that one. But the point being, they felt it was a priority and they got it done. For what it is, like to say how do you like the new additions or whatever, there's really not that much that's going to make this opening day roster that's going to be significantly different. In terms of additions, like the blue line is basically the blue line from the deadline.
Yeah.
Nick Roy looks like he's going to be starting in the bottom six. Dakota Joshua's going to be starting in the bottom six. I did like the addition of Matthias Michelli, and I'm very curious to see how that ends up playing out for the team. But in a lot of ways, this is basically still the same team for better and for worse.
For people who don't know a lot about Matthias Michelli, which is pretty fair after being in Arizona and Utah, we haven't seen a whole lot of him. Is it reasonable? I want to be very careful how I use this, but Mitch light, Mitch super light, like Mitch really light. Like this guy has a chance based on what he's done before, despite coming off 18 points or whatever it was last year, at times a healthy scratch. He has shown to be reasonably responsible, a two-way guy, not Mitch, not best in the league, Selke votes guy, but somewhat capable of that kind of thing. A good playmaker type of guy, not Mitch, quality playmaker guy, but if you're looking for somebody who can step in at like a third of the cost of what Mitch was going to cost, is this, based on your knowledge of the guy, like a similar type player, but not at the same stratosphere? I'm sure you know what I'm driving at.
I do. I don't know if I would fully say that, but I think what you're looking at is, what's a good way of putting this? I'd say he's kind of like what people sell Max Domi's offensive skill as, but like actually the case, if this all pans out, like he is also a playmaking first kind of guy. He's also a high work rate guy, but he is a little bit more responsible in terms of his two-way game. Obviously, Toronto's going to hope that they get a little bit of that value here. They're hoping this is going to be kind of like when they brought in Mike Bunting to play on that top line. Yeah. The issue is, in that case, you were looking for a guy who would be able to riff off of Marner and not replace him.
Yes.
So we're going to see how this goes. But his first couple of seasons in the league spoke for themselves. Like 2 seasons where he was at 50 or 49 and 57 points. He was in the Calder race in his rookie year. He's shown the capability to play at a top 6 level. And he's still not even 25 years old yet. Unless it comes out like 8 days from now in this case. He's exactly 25 years old. But there's something there to take the chance on him. And obviously there wasn't a huge asset cost paid to get him. He's not coming in at an overly high salary. You're hoping that last year is a bit of an aberration. From the sounds of it, he just kind of didn't fit the role that Utah wanted for him. And that happens with guys, especially when you're middle of the lineup. So I think it makes sense for the Leafs to find out, because so much of succeeding in this league now is finding unexpected value. And right now, he was the definition of a buy low acquisition, and we'll find out if it was the right one.
The other notable acquisition, or it's not an acquisition, the notable transaction here happened just a few days ago, and that was the extension for Anthony Stolarz. And, when you look at all of his numbers, last year he was outstanding, and the Leafs had one of the top tandems in the league. but you are now extending for 4 years a guy who's 31 years old and has still never played 40 games in the league. The number is low enough that I think you can live with it, but I'm sort of curious what your initial take was when you saw the 4-year term and the cap hit, and whether that's something you would have done.
I mean, I kind of got it. I've talked before about how I'm not someone who believes in paying for goalies basically ever. There are very few guys who are consistently great while playing under high workloads in this league. And obviously those guys come at a premium, and I understand why teams commit to them. But when you look at this almost kind of like running backs in the NFL, like there's usually a pretty short shelf life on a lot of these guys' best runs. There's a lot of inconsistency from season to season, sometimes game to game, week to week. Stolarz has shown in the last few years that he's capable of producing consistent results, but as you alluded to, the workload hasn't really been there. He's played in the league 8 years and he hasn't even gone to 150 games yet.
Right.
So there is a bit of concern there when you see that and say, okay, he obviously was great in his performances last year, but still not at a starter's workload, even though that's the most he's played.
Is he more injuries, right? A knee injury, a head injury to finish the season. Like there's a lot of risk here.
Exactly, and not exactly young either. We're talking about a goalie who you would say, 150 games, he must still be pretty new to this, but at the same time, he's going to be 32 in a couple of months. I know I'm almost adding a year to everybody when I say this stuff.
Jeff's a roundup guy.
Yeah, he's basically 60. But point being, he's at the point where this is what he is, and there's a possibility that this starts to curl down the other way, especially with injuries. So I understand the risk there. At the same time, the cap hit's really low for a guy who has given back-to-back 925 seasons in this league. And you're hoping that even if you're just getting a year or two of that out of it, and then the back years, you kind of have to figure out what to do with that contract afterwards, then you're probably laughing. And I mean, when you combine that with Joe Wall's deal, assuming Wall is back at some point soon, you have two goalies who kind of same boat, haven't played starters minutes. But between the two of them, you stitch together most of the season's workload, and you stitch that together with some pretty good numbers and some pretty good performances, all coming in at less than what a lot of teams are paying starters, and even what a lot of teams are now paying to try to hit bullseyes on guys they think could be starters. We saw a lot of those like $6-7 million deals this year on guys like Lucas Dostal from Anaheim, for example.
Kevin Lankinen just got 5.5 for a term.
Yes,
right?
Spencer Knight got like 5.8 from Chicago. And exactly. So like the teams are taking these sorts of chances, hoping that they hit. Going to what I was saying before with Michelli, the whole point of this now is going to be trying to hit bullseyes. Like that's the big separator that's helped so many of the teams that have consistently won in the last few years. I mean, people will talk about play style and all that, but it's the fact that they've hit so well on a lot of these secondary contracts and they found surplus value. As the salary cap goes up now, I think it's going to be less of like people saw Kaprizov and like, our superstar is going to be a lot more expensive. Well, one, I think McDavid kind of shut that down today. He made it very hard for anybody. So,
I think he said.
Exactly. Now we're way back the other way. Everyone's got to start asking less. But no, I think where teams are going to be spending this money is they're going to be taking a lot of these dice rolls and going for hoping for that. Sorry, a little bit tongue-tied there. Yep. Going for the bullseyes, trying to get a few big hits, and the guys that don't work out, you pay a little bit of an asset premium to move them on to other teams that are in rebuilding phases or whatever, but you're not going to win without a couple of these really good deals under you. So there's going to be a lot of paying for potential and paying for unrealized value. And I think in Toronto's case, when they look at Stolarz, they look at the quality performances that he puts on when he plays, and they think that taking the chance here makes a lot of sense, at least short term.
Yeah, and it not to get too off topic, but this is sort of how the Florida Panthers got fat, right? We'll take your guy that's not working. Reinhart, you're not happy there at Buffalo, you don't love him. Sam Bennett, you don't love that. Mikkola, right. Will bring him in. And I did see a great tweet, though, from Jay Fresh the other day that was like, Florida has changed their game from all kinds of really smart buy low acquisitions to now just precious sign everything you can for as long as you can once you've got them there coming off the Mikkola deal. But before we look forward too much, Jeff, I want to preface this again for the audience. You and I are speaking on Monday night, so we have seen the Leafs submit their roster by 5 p.m. like they were supposed to do, but by the time this drops on Wednesday morning, we'll see if there's been any tinkering. I have seen some suggestion that this roster was to maximize the LTIR thing, get as tight as you can like some other years. But that doesn't really reconcile why Easton Cowan wasn't skating with the regular group. Like, he was the 13th forward, and so I do have I don't want to frame this conversation too harshly in that he's in or he's out, but there was some contradictory signs that we saw here on Monday that may have been resolved or explained by the time people hear this Wednesday morning. But the Leafs did make a couple of moves here on Monday, one of them being Easton Cowan, looking like he is going to start with the Marlies, which I think coming into camp, a lot of people thought was likely, but then throughout camp, you saw maybe that's not what's going to happen. He spent a lot of time with Lawton and Lorentz on a fourth line, which was kind of interesting. And they also claimed Caden Primo as a goalie and Sammy Blais off waivers today as well. Do any of these little things, as we're wrapping up camp and setting up the roster, did any of those jump out to you or surprise you or, are interesting to you?
I don't want to say they're not interesting. I don't know if they really surprised me too much. I think we're kind of going down the list. So with Cowan, I think this is what makes the most sense. I think, we saw him play some time in preseason in the bottom six and playing those kind of more role player type minutes. But I think there's an element of that where it's almost showing him what that looks like in the league and kind of giving him an ability to learn a bit from those players. But at the same time, we're talking about a 20-year-old that you want to develop into someone who can play in at least your third line, hopefully your first or second line.
Play 11 minutes on the fourth line.
Yeah. Exactly. And he's not going to get there if you're going to be playing him 8, 9, 10 minutes a night right off the hop. I don't think that that's doing him a service in his development to do that, especially if your thought is like, okay, well, he gets to be around these guys at least. You're the Maple Leafs and you have the Marlies now. This isn't Toronto or London anymore. They can find ways to shuffle him across the hall for a quick call for a practice or whatever. If they want to get him absorbed with the group and make him part of the Leafs while he does all this stuff with the Marlies. So I think that's something that's been such an asset to them over these past almost 20 years now. Having the team close by, and that's something they're going to continue to do here. I think it makes the most sense for him to go down to the Marlies, get as many minutes as possible, play an offensive role, get used to playing against still a very skilled level of pro in those types of minutes. And then if you want to try to acclimate him throughout the year, because now it's not all or nothing.
Well, he'll be number one power play down there, right? And facing big, strong men, defensemen, and
he'll probably play top PK minutes too to get him used to that, because he'll have to play that role once he gets to the NHL as well. And then if you want to call him up here and there, give him a couple of minutes playing in that more depth kind of role, or even try to test him out with like on a Matthews or Tavares line, you can do that. This isn't all or nothing like before, where you're choosing between, okay, you staying with the team or see you later, go play junior for the year, and maybe we'll see you again in 6 months. Now you can have him have his primary role, bring him up and down as necessary, and let him get those tastes, go back down, take the lessons from it, get a little bit better in the areas that he feels that he needs to grow, and kind of slow burn him in that way. You obviously don't want this to be the permanent thing for him. It'd be nice if by the end of the year he's someone that you feel comfortable with bringing up to the NHL roster, and if not the end of the year, like by the start of next season, because you don't want to be using those precious entry-level contract years on time not spent in the league. We're going back to the idea of finding salary cap value. There's nothing more valuable than a good player on an entry level, so you hope that he can be a good player by the time that entry level's done. But I think it's the right thing for him. Going to the waiver claims today, I'm not too surprised by it. I know that the James Reimer return was something that had a lot of attention in a lot of different directions. I think generally a lot of people like the nostalgia of it, but there's a lot of layers there.
Yeah.
looking at his actual performance, I know it was only half a game, but it did seem like he was showing his age a little bit. And I don't know that they have the patience to fully watch him go through the conditioning.
But he came into camp really late, and the last 2 years, his numbers are fine for a third goalie, for a backup, right? I look at him versus Caden Primo. I don't know, man. Like, I think Caden Primo's career is like 880 or something. Now, he played behind a lot of bad Montreal teams early on. I don't know. If this is a short-term thing and you're waiting and hoping Joseph Woll won't be gone too long, you're right. You don't have time for James Reimer to get up to speed, I guess. But I don't know that Caden Primo's a better option than James Reimer right now. I would have been interested in a Mikey DiPietro or something like that, who was also on waivers, but...
Yeah, I think that's not unfair. I think we just to kind of finish on the Reimer point, they're in such a unique spot for that because you obviously don't think he's going to be taking a lot of games from Stolarz at the start, and then if you wanted to put him down to the Marlies afterwards, you also don't want him getting in the way of Hildeby or
Atimov, yeah.
Atimov, yeah, exactly. So if anything, the person I kind of feel a little bit bad for here is Hildeby, where he doesn't get to hop in and be the backup to start off the season. Right. You would think that he was kind of ready for this moment, but I don't think they want to necessarily take the chance on that right now because you don't really, none of us really know how long Wall was out for, the circumstances behind that, whether this is something where Primo's here for a couple of weeks, kind of fills in, and you send him right back on waivers afterwards, or maybe it's less than that, maybe it's more than that.
Sure. You got to figure they probably have a reasonable handle on how long this might be, right? They don't know for sure. We don't know anything, but they probably have a bit of a handle on.
Right, they're working with they're working within the parameters that they know. We're working on guesswork right now.
Yep.
And then as for whether Primo was the right guy, I mean, goalies, who knows? Kind of what you alluded to. He was really bad last year in his appearances, but 2 years ago he was putting up very respectable numbers for the Habs. And we're talking about a guy who, I'll round down, he just turned 26. So there's still a little bit of legroom there, especially for a netminder. Sure. So you're hoping maybe it's he looks more like he did in 2024 than last season. If he does that, then he's a fine placeholder and he could even have some upside. So maybe that's a thought there. Then Sammy Blais, I don't really have much of an opinion on him.
Is there anything?
He's an energy guy, but
he was in St. Louis and Berube knows him, and they liked him. They went out twice and got him for the Blues.
I think he was in St. Louis and Berube likes him. I think that's kind of what it comes down to. But I mean, that's not unreasonable when you're talking about playing on the fourth line.
No,
it can be unreasonable if you take a rollish player and put him in serious minutes. But when your fourth line's there to do a simple job, whether or not you think that's the way fourth line should be constructed, that's the way they generally are. Mm-hmm. You at least want it to be someone that knows what you want out of the whole thing and can execute that. So if he's coming in to be a simple player that Berube trusts to do that, then all power to them, I guess. Whether or not he's playing every single game, we'll see.
Yeah, he was in the A last year, and I the biggest takeaway for me as camp winds down on that front is just how little Berube must think of David Kampf, right? He was on waivers. You not only did you lose Lawton and still go ahead and put Kampf on waivers. Now that there's a chance that opens up, you rejigged everything. You took Domi off the top line, which you were looking at, put him back in the middle, Nikolai Waugh down on a different line than he'd been playing on all through camp, and brought in Sammy Blais. It's pretty clear Berube has no time for David Kampf.
Yeah, there's that, but there's also, as you said, there's cap repercussions too. Blais is a league minimum player. Kampf, by clearing waivers, you're taking off a few $100,000 more than that, so it gives them just a little bit more flexibility. So I don't know. There's layers there. It's interesting in the sense that the connection and you kind of want to know where a guy's role is, but it's not a move that I think we're going to spend too much time thinking about, unless all of a sudden we're into January and we're 19 minutes. How did this happen? Which I don't think will be the
Willie
case.
And Tavares. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Let's look forward, man, because we do this every year. We make a big deal out of the opening night lineup, and on night one, somebody sprains an ankle and somebody's called up, and you never see that lineup again all year long. So, I'm sort of curious. You mentioned a little while ago the John Tavares extension, and look, John Tavares did exactly what and more than what you could have hoped after the season he had last year. I want to be here. I'm taking the hometown discount and then some. And yet, I don't think you can ever fault John Tavares again, but you are still left with him at number 2 center. And as of last year, that was fine. But we will, at some point, get to a place where that becomes untenable. And there have been moments before where it has looked like that point has arrived, and he's always pulled the nose back up. You survived the 7-year, $11 million per. It didn't go off a cliff at the end like some long-term deals like that can. Is this team right now, when they're looking to add later on in the season with very little to deal to get it, for a top 6 forward, are they still in the hunt for a number 2 center? Does that have to be the spot, or do you think Tavares is, based on what we've seen, still got another year where he can do that job pretty capably?
It's hard to say. I mean, I do
at some
think
point it is a ticking time bomb. It might not be now, but it's coming at some point.
Yeah, you're right. I hate to say it because Tavares is my favorite player in the league, but at the same time, there's going to be a point where he is going to slide down the lineup. He's not getting any younger. Father time comes for us all. At the same time, we also got to know what the market is. If you get to the deadline, if you're getting into February, and we can get a center for the sake of getting a center,
or Scott Lawton
or there's a much better winger available to them, or a much better defensive for the same asset cost. Maybe it's worth doing that just on a matter of total talent. You kind of kick the football another year. I agree that the eyeballs need to start looking in that direction, just for the sake of the mid to long term outlook. Am I worried about it this second? No, I think he had a very good production year last year. A little bit less on the process year than he had 2 years ago. It's kind of weird. Everyone treats last year as a bounce back year, but I think it was more of a reversal year. Right. He was a very, very strong play driver 2 years ago that wasn't able to finish. Last year, he took a little bit of a step back there, but the pucks were going in.
Right.
Both of those result in a ultra premium second line center. How much longer that'll be the case goes back to your question. I can see that being more of a priority this season, but again, it's conditional on what the market is like, who's available, and maybe where else they need somebody. It's easy for us to say now, okay, they need to get somebody to replace Tavares eventually, but what happens if a month from now Nylander has a really rough injury and now you don't have you don't have the other elite
Bobby McMahon, who looks like he's going to start the year with them, had 20 goals last year. That was great. He went ice cold at the end, right? You're still not sure what that looks like either. You're one serious injury away from being oh boy, right?
Right. And then there's the question of the blue line too, where a lot of these guys are locked in for term, but is this a group that's going to be good enough and fresh enough come playoff time, especially now as everybody on that core, I guess except for Simone Benoit, is getting into the darker sides of their 30s.
Yeah.
And to go back to what we were talking about with the goaltending, Wolves long term, something happens to Stolarz, maybe that's where the priority is too. There's just so many variables at play here, but I don't disagree with the idea that at some point wouldn't hurt to keep an eye on the center market.
So with the pieces that they did add, like Dakota Joshua, I don't think you can expect a ton there, but I think you can expect him to be better than last year based on the rough offseason he had going into that season. For people who aren't familiar, he had battled testicular cancer, and that would put a serious dent in your training in that offseason. So I think you're willing to kind of wave that away and expect a bit of a bounce back. It's the same with Michelli. You're hoping for a bit of a bounce back. They bring in Nicolas Waugh, who's, maybe you can get 13 to 18 goals out of, depending on the situations you're using him in. Can Matthew Nyes take another step? When you look at this forward group, again, we can't pretend that there isn't a gaping hole where Mitch Marner used to stand, but are they still set up in your mind to be deep enough to maybe, not by committee, score quite as much, but maybe score enough and defend a little bit better. How do you see the depth of this forward group when it's put together healthy?
Honestly, I don't know. It's hard to look at them and say that this is going to be a team that's going to score in bunches at this point. I wonder a lot about, for example, how much focus will now be put on Nylander as the primary offensive winger of the team. If it's going to be as easy for him to pick up some of the points that he's been able to get the last 2 seasons, where not that he was flying under anyone's radar, but he did fly under some of the assignments. It will get more difficult for him now. As you said, Tavares' age comes. We'll see where that goes. Matthews obviously is a huge question. Does he go back to 60-goal form? Is he at last year's form, who was great process but couldn't finish? Is he somewhere in between, which would be still very welcome because that makes him a hyper elite forward once again. Nyes is a very big question for me. I keep going back and forth on his extension and his role with the team. I think there's a good player there. There's flashes where you see him and you see the potential, but there's still that question of like, okay, is this guy Rick Nash or is he Nick Kuhlman? And that's, don't get me wrong. I say that with all the love in the world for Nick Kuhlman. MGK line forever. I own 2 jerseys. But
that is a gaping, whatever.
But one of them won a Rocket and was often considered one of the best wingers in the league. The other one was really awesome for a year, but it's really awesome.
Did Matthew Nyes get fat
points
off Mitch banking shit in off of him and setting him up, or is he, got another step he might yet take? It's a fair question.
I think it's a legitimate question, which is really funny because we've had these conversations for years, and a lot of the times where we talked, I've been like, okay, I think people overestimate how much Marner was driving XYZ. And I think that's true, but he also is a guy who does help individual production a lot. And I think a lot of people's excitement for Nyes came within his individual production and not necessarily what he does for his line to drive goals. Now,
maybe now we've gone to underestimating what he was contributing, right?
Yes, I think so. And again, he insulating minutes from the other star players, all that stuff kind of makes a difference. So we're gonna see here if Nyes. I mean, obviously, you get really excited about the fact that he has power forward tools, and he still is gonna play with Matthews. So he's still gonna have the ultra elite line mate to work with, and you're hoping Michelli or whoever else ends up being on that wing can facilitate moving the puck over to him to kind of keep a lot of that stuff happening. But if he doesn't have that pop, I think a lot of people are relying on that pop to keep the goal scoring going. Then you look to the bottom half of the lineup, and it's so hard to say what version of Max Domi is Toronto getting. Are they getting the one who played the second half of 2 years ago, or are they getting the one who played a lot of last year and has been pretty unproductive after his first or second year?
Which Nick Robertson, which Bobby McMahon, right?
Or if Nick Robertson, honestly.
Yes, yeah. Until today, when we saw Cowan bumped out of the lineup and Domi backed out, Robertson was an afterthought. He was the 13th forward, and all of a sudden, here he is. Looks like he's going to be in the lineup on opening night based on Monday's practice.
Right. It's so difficult to say if this is going to be a situation where he stays with the group and if he's going to be playing every night, how exactly it all looks. And we know that when Robertson plays and he's in the lineup, he's usually scoring, but to what degree does he have the team's trust in most other aspects? All these things kind of add together, and you look at the group, and it's like they'll be quote unquote tough to play against and all that, but are they going to be a team that's going to be near the top of the league in goals for? It's not super encouraging. It will require a lot of things to go right. And that should be at least a little bit of a concern. Once you get later on into the season, you don't want this to be a team that's trying to slow down their opponents rather than asserting themselves, which has been a problem by choice in a lot of these years, but now might become a problem of necessity. And that's a bit of a worrisome spot to be in.
So we should take a look at the blue line here, and you mentioned it. They're all getting up there a little bit. Nobody's ancient, but they are all teetering into that regression place, some of them further along than others. I think everybody agrees that the big turning point this year, or the linchpin, will be Morgan Rielly, as it's been for a long time. Is he able to refine something? Last year, was it the totally natural changes that come to your life and your schedule when you become a father for the first time, and maybe you're getting 3 hours of sleep a night? Maybe it was trying too hard to adjust to Berube's system, where I'm expected to be a little more responsible, and that takes away from some of the things that I do well. Maybe it was just a bad year. Maybe it's none of those things. Maybe he's aging and he's not going to be able to do it anymore. Morgan Rielly with Brendan Carlo makes a ton of sense as a pairing. Out of all those things that I just listed off as possible problems for Rielly last year, that he may or may not be able to bounce back from, where do you put your money down on what happened and what the likelihood is he can rebound from it here?
It's hard to say what really happened. I think there's probably a little bit of all factors. Like you said, home life changes quite a bit. Role changes quite a bit. He got tried of a whole bunch of different pairings. Mind you, that's not necessarily new for him in any of his 10 plus years with the team, and it always seems
power
to
play minutes as well. If you want to look at just point totals, it's a factor.
Yeah, but that's a valid thing, and that's probably something that you're going to be able to look positively on by the end of this season. I have a feeling that that's an area where he will improve once more, because he's going to have to quarterback more of the power play this year if Marner gone. So and
we've seen that work, and we've seen it not work. So.
Yeah, so we'll see what that means for team goals, but I imagine that it's going to help him on the production front. The issue is really he's the only guy that he's still really the only guy that you can trust to be a big time offensive facilitator for the team. Oliver Ekman-Larsson isn't bad in that regard.
Maybe it's Henry Thrun.
Maybe it's Henry Thrun, but right now, based off of the lineup and the waiver wire and all that, it's not going to be Henry Thrun, and it's historically it hasn't really been.
It is not
him to begin with. I know there were people who talked about that in the summer, and maybe this is something that he can bring to the team, but I don't know if it's really based off of reality.
No.
I think there's an element of wishful thinking, but kind of just looking through this group, there's not a lot of offensive facilitation back there. It's not like a couple of years ago where there were guys who were just completely inept at moving the puck. The floor is higher, but there's really not a ceiling to speak of. Everyone's just kind of in the middle, and then Rielly's your X factor of if he's on, he's really good at this. If he's not, then he's B minus C plus in that regard, and you've got really no one who's going to drive anything from back there. And in this league, more than ever,
starved up front, not starved, but less than before. It doesn't help that your defense suddenly can't get you the puck, right?
Right, you're right. And in this league, more than ever, it's become so important to have players who can move it up to you. Not the teams are going all out attack, but the floor for what defensemen can facilitate for their teammates is improved dramatically over the past few years. A lot of the best teams are the teams that have at least one guy who can really open up plays from the blue line, and this has been something that has dodged the Leafs' grasp basically this entire window.
Yeah.
They've made a couple attempts to get guys who help them out in that regard, but they've never quite landed it.
Come on down, Tyson Barrie.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that this group is much better in that sense. Again, the floor of them is solid. They'll help you with preventing goals at least for another couple of years, because you've got to kind of look at this group as a multi-year group of all the contracts that they have. Maybe if there's an upgrade down the line, they make it, but you're going with the expectation that these guys are around. They're still going to be solid at limiting, but in terms of pushing pucks up, it remains a concern. And when you don't have the guys who can open up plays on their own up front, it becomes a real worry. I know this all sounds very doomery, because at the end of this, I'm still going to say this team is an above average team that'll still probably make the playoffs and all that. But
well, it's interesting, right, Jeff? Because when you dive into this, there was a story being told last year, and there's a story told about every team, and it's the one that people just want to tell or want to believe or whatever. And it was Craig Berube was going to come in. He was going to make them a different team, and they were going to defend much harder, and they're going to be harder to play against, and they were going to be better defensively. And when you dive in, you look at what they've built here since he's arrived and the guys they've acquired, it seems like that's what they're trying to do, but there's no evidence in the numbers last year that said this defensive group gave up fewer chances or was tougher to get in. You got very high-level goaltending that masked some issues, and you don't possess the puck as much as you used to. You're a little leaky on the rush, and you can sort of go, well, they keep winning and they're not giving up a lot of goals. But if all of a sudden Stolarz is just 5 or 10 save percentage points worse, and Joseph Woll isn't back until, December 15th and takes a little while to get going, these flaws can be brought out into the light. Like the story was they were going to be a better defensive team. They really weren't. They just got goaltending that made it look that way.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Like I think there are ways that made them more persistent against opponents, but it still led to a bunch of chances against. You can, I'm sure there's arguments to be made for like goalies maybe getting better looks at shots and stuff like that. I don't have the proprietary data to double check how
these
true.
Things are all intertwined. You're right.
To check all that, but at the same time, like they were still a team that they gave up a pretty pedestrian amount of expected goals. They gave up an above average amount of shot attempts, scoring chances, high danger chances. It's hard to look at this and say, okay, this is a premier shutdown team, which all goes back to the point of teams not scoring and they're going into the playoffs and they have to say, okay, well, our goal here is we have to lock this down and win games 2-1, 3-1, that sort of thing.
And if you're not going to have that same comeback ability, that same quick strike ability, if it has been a tight game and your goalie has kept you in it, and all of a sudden it's Mitch to Matthews quick, and it's, oh, there you go, you pulled one out late. Like, this stuff can unwind in a hurry.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's going to be something that they're going to have to watch out for during the season. And if it starts to become a problem pretty early, it could be a situation where they have to make a move on the fly to alleviate this. How easy that's going to be is hard to say, because you're either going to have to move a couple of pieces throughout the lineup to change the look of the whole thing, or you're going to have to find one really big piece that can play significant minutes. And that's certainly not easy to do in December, January. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Like, this team's not getting any faster. Even we're talking about most of their recent acquisitions. It's not exactly a group of burners.
It is not.
And I don't necessarily mean that just in foot speed, but even just like none of them are known as being high, quick processing guys. Because some guys can get away with not being the fastest to feet if they can think the pass half a second before. It's how, like, when they bought low on Jason Spezza years ago, he's one of the slowest guys in the NHL, but plays happen quick when he was with them or when he was on the ice. I don't know if they have that right now, outside of hoping that everyone's really in sync on dump and retrieve or similar type plays. Like it needs to come from like raw systemic buy-in, which maybe they get. I don't know. But it's certainly not going to be the easy way looking forward.
No. So last thing for you then, and like you said, you and I have sort of made this sound more doom and gloom than it really is, or at least in my opinion. And I want to zoom out here a little bit. And I've said a few times on the show, heading towards the season, I expect this team to be worse in the regular season, but I don't expect them to fall off a cliff. As we look at the division here, Tampa seems to be holding something back about Vasilevsky. We'll see how healthy he is, but I like them a lot. For me, I think they win the division if he's healthy. Florida, I would have said from the beginning, before their injury issues, they don't care. They roll through the season. They've had some long playoff runs. They don't care if they start on the road. If they finish third and whatever, then that's what they'll do. Then you lose Barkov, Matthew Tkachuk for half a year. It may no longer be about coasting. It may now be about talent. Montreal and Ottawa are trying to establish themselves as not one-offs, but regular playoff teams that have arrived. How do you sort of see the top end of this division shaking loose, and where does Toronto fit into it?
I mean, I think it's as wide open as it's ever been, or not ever been, but like in recent years, just because of all the circumstances surrounding all the teams. Like as you kind of alluded to, like Tampa's been kind of in this, what exactly are they moving forward for the past couple years, and certainly made a good push towards the end of last year. But we'll see if that's the style of play that they bring the season, and who's fully healthy, who isn't, and also evidently from the last few hours who's eligible to play.
Yes.
As they appear to be the only team that was in any of that stuff. But anyway,
the only ones being punished for the melee on Saturday.
Yeah, so we'll see where they're at. They certainly can't have the talent where all the pieces, if they come together, they could be the group that runs away with it, especially if Vasilevsky is healthier than seemed. Florida has the issue of arguably their two best players being out for considerable amounts of time.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives every team in the division some time to figure their stuff out or to get a head start. That obviously plays to Toronto's favor. But it plays to a lot of teams' favor as well. Montreal, again, they're the high end there. We're still kind of figuring out what all that is with that group. There's certainly
I personally, I think they overachieved quite a bit last year, but they've brought in Dobson. We'll see a full season of Demidov. Maybe they're closer than we think.
Yeah, and there's some good players there that could make some significant leaps. Like it looks like Hudson's going to be a legitimate star. We'll see what Slavkovsky is this year. Suzuki looked his most star-like last
on Monday's
season.
morning skate. Patrick Laine back on the fourth line. That doesn't appear to be working, but if he could ever find it again, that's...
Yeah, exactly. And even if it's just gets them a few power play goals here and there, that could be the difference in a lot of games. And with the division as competitive as it is, a couple wins can go a long way. Ottawa, again, we'll see, especially if Allmark has a good year.
Mm-hmm.
It could be very fruitful for them. I know we're having the annual battle of the models say this team is all right versus come on with the Sabres. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
At some point, it's got to happen, doesn't it?
At some point, it's got to happen. I'm gonna go to a game this year, so I'm gonna be the one that fixes the tide.
Well, that'll be good. I know Sabres fans love when Leaf fans come down and help them out there.
But I'll be going hoping for. Well, I don't know if I'll be hoping for them, but I'll be there as a guest of them.
Okay.
Going back to our craft beer thing.
This is it.
It came with our ball hockey pass. That was amazing value. They do a really good setup there. So
wow.
You get a pair of tickets to a regular season game.
Oh,
so we're gonna go see them against. We're gonna go see them against the Caps. Which will be a lot of fun.
Maybe
one more time of seeing. Exactly, maybe one more time of seeing him. So we'll see what happens with them. Detroit, I mean, there's a lot of young pieces that we've been waiting to see dividends on for a long time, but who knows? And there's still a lot of holes in that group. We'll see if John Gibson is a guy again, or if he was part of the Ducks' problems rather than waiting for the solution. Who do we got left in this division? Oh yeah, I guess the Bruins are still kicking around. And now that we're all like, oh, it's over, Pavel Zacha's going to have 168 points or something stupid. So you can't really discount them either.
Lindholm and McAvoy back in healthy. Swayman not doing the contract thing through training camp.
Yeah,
I don't think they're
seriously.
a playoff team, but I think they're better. Right?
Yeah, and look, if Swayman goes back to Swayman of 2 years ago, it will be a very tough challenge. But that's a swing of dozens of goals.
Yeah.
Because that's 40, 50 save percentage points. That could be a huge swing for them.
Absolutely.
Granted, they didn't really score a lot of goals last year, so probably not enough to catapult them all the way back up to the top of the totem pole.
Yeah.
But again, that means all of these teams, there's something.
You're taking points off each other, right? Every win somebody gets took two from somebody else, right? This is going to be, to me, really condensed. Like you said, as close, as wide open as it's been in a while. Right.
There's almost any order of the group that you can throw at me, and I'd say, hey, it's possible. And that plays Toronto too. Now, I think in the most likely of scenarios, there's still a top three team of that group just on total talent and all that stuff. If one of the goalies is healthy for most of it, that's probably a pretty good omen for them. You're I'm thinking Matthews is going to be more productive this year, so I think that makes the difference.
Yeah, I don't need Matthews to get back to 69. I need him to get back to 50.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you get that and you get good goaltending, you're probably pretty comfortable for the top three. And if Florida digs himself enough of a hole, then maybe you take a run at the division again. So after questioning this team for the last 48 minutes, I'm saying yes, it's still possible. But I think that's just the nature of this division no longer being the Thunderdome, and for this year being a bit of a slap fight, which is fun in its own way.
The Thunderdome, you mean, is I think the term you were looking for. We're gonna
Good call, though that might be the North Division of the AHL.
Could be. Jeff Veillette, it's always fun, man, when you make a little time to do this each year on the opening day of the NHL season, or at least that's when everybody else gets to hear this. But and I guess even that's not correct. It's the opening day of the Maple Leaf season. We got a triple header on Tuesday first, 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, or whatever that looks like.
Those don't count. Yeah,
no, exactly. It's not. It doesn't matter until it starts in Toronto, and maybe Ben McDonald of the ESPN baseball crew, who wasn't planning to watch opening night on ESPN on Tuesday, will watch the Leafs on Wednesday. You have to assume. So I appreciate you doing this, man. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. It's something I make time for every year. You're one of the few people I still hop on the mic for, and I really enjoy being on, and thank you for having me on.
All right, good stuff there. Toronto Maple Leafs and Montreal Canadiens, as it almost always seems to be, kicking off the season later on tonight. Thanks to Jeff for making a little time for us there. Don't forget, Thursday, all things Ottawa Senators with Graham Nichols from the Hockey News and the Coming in Hot podcast. That should be a lot of fun as well, so stick around for that one. Like I said off the top, if you haven't done so yet, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to the show wherever you're hearing us right now. Maybe leave a little rating, leave a little review. That'd be awesome. But that's it for today. We're back tomorrow with Graham Nichols. We'll see you then.
I thought it generally sucked. I didn't think it was a specific suck. I thought it was like an all-encompassing type of suck. So, we're going to try and rectify that. But for right now, I'm going to be pretty pissed about it.